Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be here again in the framework of INIR and deliver my thoughts about the instrumentalization and weaponization of migration in the European context. I think what we can heard previously from Mark and feels very important that it's asymmetric and geopolitical context of instrumentalization and weaponization of migration. It's very important that it's always the instrument of the weaker parties, as we can see in both the European and the American context. And paradoxically, and it's a worrying situation, these countries which are weaponizing immigration actually exploiting our values and our best standards in the case of human rights. And I would like to underline one important thing in the international asylum system, which was partly mentioned by Phil and Mark as well, which is perhaps the weakest point of that. It's highly connected to the territory of both the United States and the European member states. And while if somebody would like to cross borders legally, she or he has to go through a long procedure, vetting, etc., etc. In the case if somebody tells, no, I'm asylum seekers, we have a pre-assumption that he or she is a real refugee, so we let him or her into our territory. And in the case of the United States, for example, in the Remain Mexico program, there is a shift, but in the context of Europe, we don't see it. We are letting people into our territory, and after we are struggling to deport them, even if we know that the majority is, let's say, economic migrants and not real refugees. In the European context, we can distinguish two, let's say, level of the problem. The first I call instrumentalization, and the second weaponization, because there are significant differences between the two phenomena. In the case of instrumentalization, we can see some kind of political pressure and we can say blackmailing by certain powers, by Turkey or Morocco, which try to press and try to win something in the context of Europe and certain European states. It's very important that these countries not causing the flow of migrants, they just utilizing natural or semi-natural processes. Not Turkey invited the Syrian refugees into the territory or Morocco or the sub-Saharan Africans. They arrived and both Rabat or Ankara realized that no, it's an asset which can use in the bargaining with the European Union and the member state. It means that even some level of cooperation is possible between these, let's say, blackmailing countries and certain European countries. The other level of the problem, weaponization, is a more problematic issue. What's happened in the case of Belarus in 2021 and still happening in the Polish border, or what Russia is doing also in the eastern part of Europe and in the Sahel region. Because it's not the utilization of natural processes. These are man-made or, let's say, state-made crises. For example, the case of Belarus, Belavia, the national carrier of Belarus, brought the people from the Middle East and the Sub-Saharan Africa to the territory in Belarus, and the Belarusian authorities organized the transports from the airports to the Polish border to press and force these people to go to the territory of Poland and other states. So it's an artificial crisis. It's very important. We tend to forget, but it's also part of a broader hybrid warfare, or somebody calls it is a gray zone operation, somewhere with an open and not open engagement of the warfare, or as the Russian doctrine is saying, it's the part of the Gerasimov doctrine, which uses all assets, including the military, but also economic, social, information warfare instruments to reach its political goals. And migrants in this context is an excellent part of this weaponization process, which is happening. We tend to forget again that it's not only about politics, but because the leadership of many authoritarian regimes is connected, simply saying, organized criminal network, it's also about money. it was very well detected that during the Belarusian crisis, individual migrants paid between 20 and 40,000. Once again, $40,000 for the Belarusian state for the visa to reach the territory of Belarus and after the European Union. So it's generating millions and 10 millions of dollars income for the states and its leadership. And it's also documented by the Italian Ministry of Defense, the Spanish Ministry of Defense, as the Wagner Group in Africa is involved, the human smuggling, that they are generating millions of money for these networks. It's also a useful instrument to test the willing and the ability of the affected states and entities, whether they are ready to act, whether they are divided how to answer in the case of the European Union for this crisis. There are certain experts who are arguing that what Belarus did with the support of Russia in 2021 was actually a test that how Europe will react after a bigger crisis, which came 2022 with the war in Ukraine, when not just some tens of thousands of people, but millions of Ukrainians arrived to the territory of the European Union. And yes, the Ukrainian war and the Ukrainian refugee crisis is also a part of this weaponization of migration. Ladies and gentlemen, currently almost 5 million Ukrainian citizens are in certain European countries under temporary protecting directive. Healthcare, education, and all other aspects of welfare is a huge burden for European countries and citizens. I know there is constant debate who is paying more for Ukraine in humanitarian, weapon assistance, etc., but please don't forget that feeding and take care of 5 million Ukrainian refugees in Europe, it's a huge burden on us. And I mentioned the Sahel region in Africa because we see the eastern flank of Europe is in flames, but we shouldn't forget, to quote Churchill, the soft underbelly of Europe, the Mediterranean region, where we can see where actually the migration crisis of Europe started in 2013. And what we see in the last 3-4 years is that Russia is fueling tension in the region. Wagner Group, and the new name Africa Corps, a la Henry Rommel, what they are doing there, they are not there to provide stability, which is the official narration, to replace neo-colonial French troops in the framework of friendship and mutual cooperation with, Mali, Niger, etc. No, they are there to fuel tension, increase instability, because it's fuel migration. And ladies and gentlemen, if 1,000 people arriving to the island of Lampedusa per day, the Italian parliament will not concentrate on how much weapons should be sent to Ukraine, but how to tackle with the migration crisis. It's very, very simple issue, unfortunately. And last but not least, NGOs, were mentioned previously, who's playing a very ugly game, saying they are creating facts on the ground. It's a very simple issue. If they pick up people immediately along the Libyan shore and coming and saying, okay, there are 500 people on the boat, what we can do? Of course, liberal democracies can hardly say, no, bring them back to Libya, which is a problem because human smuggling networks utilize it, external powers, perhaps Russia, utilize it. There's prove that there are direct connection or contact, at least, between the human smuggling networks and these NGOs. And of course, they are utilizing this asymmetry, the moral pressure that we have to take care of the people. And as I mentioned, it's a very ugly game because what's happening during this process is that we are making refugees, okay? Because most of the people who are arriving, for example, Libya, they are coming from Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire, other countries where there's no systematic persecution against them, no war. They are simply saying economic migrants. But among the Libyan context, where are militias, low-level civil war, torture, etc., after this experience and after crossing Libya, we can't tell anymore, no, we are bringing back just to Libya because they are economic migrants. No, because the situation in Libya is so bad for these people that no, in this context, legally, they become refugees. So this is what I utilize. these NGOs, perhaps not as a weaponization, but directly as an instrumentalization of migration. Thank you very much.